My father demanded 80% of my salary, so I bought my mother's house at auction and kicked them out. I landed a $400,000 a year job. My father demanded 50% for us, 30% for your sister. No excuses. That afternoon I packed everything and stopped paying their bills. Now they come begging for my help while I enjoy my full salary. I told them, figure it out yourselves. I do not give money to extortionists. Congratulations, son. Now you will be able to help your family as you should. They did not even let me savor the news of my new job, $400,000 a year. For 5 years I had been paying off the medical debts from my late mother's cancer, living on the bare minimum. I was finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We need 50% to maintain this house and for your sister, and 30% for the mechanic shop. No excuses. My father blurted out as if it were the most normal thing in the world. That is almost my entire salary after taxes. I laughed. I thought it was a joke. It was not. You lived here for free for 28 years. It is time to pay it back. We raised you, gave you a roof over your head, food. Now it is your turn to pay. My pregnant sister smiled as if she had already cashed the check. I already quit my job. I knew you would help us. I talked to my husband. We need a new car, and if you do not accept, my uncle added, crossing his arms, we will sue you for family abandonment. We already have a lawyer. I froze. They were extorting me. Family is sacred, my father replied without blinking. That night as I packed, I went through the papers. 5 years of electricity, water, food, all in my name. 5 years of medical bills, of sacrifice for mom. I had been paying for everything while they lived like kings. That was the day they stopped being my family, and I stopped paying for my own kidnapping. The first few days were pure freedom. For the first time in 5 years, my entire salary was mine. I bought decent food, joined a gym, and even treated myself to dinner out without checking the prices. Meanwhile, the messages from my family started as an annoying trickle. Why did the bills bounce from my sister? Call me urgently, from my father. You are an ungrateful brat, from my uncle. I ignored them until something arrived that I could not ignore, a court summons. My father had sued me for filial abandonment, demanding that a judge force me to pay them support. The audacity left me speechless. I needed a lawyer. I found one specializing in family law who greeted me with an I have seen it all expression. I explained my situation while he took notes. Do you have documentation proving you have already been supporting the family's expenses? He asked. 5 years of paying for everything. I need proof and also any financial documents related to your mother. If your father has hidden assets, we can countersue. That night, I went to look for my mother's papers, dusty boxes filled with medical receipts, hospital bills, insurance letters. As I sifted through them, I found something that made me stop, an old handwritten letter from my maternal grandmother. My dearest daughter, with this trust fund, I want to secure your future and that of my grandson. May you never want for anything. Trust fund? What trust fund? I called the law firm that had handled my grandmother's will. The senior partner, now retired, answered from his home. Of course, I remember. $250,000 in a trust fund for medical expenses. Your father was the trustee. It was not used for the treatment. My breath caught in my throat. Where is that money? Son, your father dissolved the trust 3 days after your mother's funeral. He said there was no longer a medical need. The phone slipped from my hands. All this time, all that debt I had paid religiously, the sacrifice, the sleepless nights spent figuring out how to stretch every dollar, it had all been a lie. My mother died while my father had $250,000 tucked away, and then he made me pay his bills as if it were my obligation. I sent everything to my lawyer. 2 days later, he called me, and for the first time in a week, he sounded excited. This is not just filial abandonment. This is fraud, embezzlement of trust funds. Your father is in serious trouble. As I processed this bombshell, my sister escalated her desperation. She found out where I worked and called human resources, pretending to be a concerned former employee, accusing me of stealing intellectual property from the family business. On Monday morning, my boss summoned me to his office. We need to clear some things up. We received a very specific anonymous tip. Someone claims you designed several projects while working for an unregistered family company, and that you are now using those ideas here. My stomach turned. I knew exactly who had called, but how could I prove it? My sister had been clever. She mentioned real projects from my personal portfolio, ones I had developed in my free time years ago. Does this family company exist? He asked. My father owns a business, but I never worked there. I created those designs as an independent freelancer. I have all the contracts. The investigation lasted 2 tense weeks. They had to review my entire work history, contact my former clients, and verify file creation dates. My sister had been smart. She had found my old Behance and LinkedIn profiles where I had uploaded those projects and presented them as proof of my work for them. Paranoia consumed me. What if my family had retroactively registered a company? What if they had forged documents? During those 2 weeks, every conversation with my boss felt loaded with suspicion until the call came that changed everything. The human resources director summoned me with a serious face. We spoke with the person who made the complaint. When we asked for specific proof of employment contracts, she hung up. She tried calling back with a different voice, pretending to be a witness, but it was from the same phone number. The relief hit me like a wave. Not only had I survived the sabotage, but my sister had been exposed as an amateur liar. Furthermore, my boss added, "We verified all your projects. The copyrights have been in your name since before this supposed family company even existed. Case closed." But that call prompted me to investigate my father further. Public records are a goldmine when you know where to look, and what I found made my blood run cold. My father had mortgaged the family home, the house my mother had bought with her inheritance, for $100,000 almost 15 months ago with an express loan carrying brutal interest rates. I understood everything immediately. His desperation for my money was not just greed. His business was failing, and he needed my salary to save his own skin. The 80% demand was his emergency plan to avoid losing the house. But it was too late for him. He had used the mortgage payments to patch holes in his business and was now in default. The house my mother had bought, where she had spent her final years, was about to go to foreclosure auction. That night, sitting in my new apartment with a cold beer, I had a realization that changed me forever. I was not going to lift a finger to save him. For the first time in my adult life, I held all the power, and this time, I was going to use it. My phone rang. It was my father. "We need to talk. It is urgent. We have nothing to talk about. The house. Your mother." "What about the house?" A long silence, then in a broken voice, "They are going to take it." I hung up and turned off the phone. Let it all burn. Let him pay for what he did to my mother. Let him pay for every lie, every manipulation, every dollar he stole from me. Justice sometimes arrives on its own. Other times, you have to give it a little push. My lawyer wasted no time. The countersuit for fraud and embezzlement of the trust fund landed on my father like an anvil. We requested an immediate freeze of his assets and a restraining order. "With the evidence we have," he told me, "this is not just a family dispute, it is a federal crime." 2 days later, I received confirmation. Restraining order approved. My father and sister could no longer legally contact me. The harassing calls, the desperate messages, all of it became additional evidence against them. At work, things took an unexpected turn. My boss called me into his office with a smile. "We reviewed your entire portfolio after that ridiculous complaint. The projects your sister claimed you stole are exactly the ones that convinced us to hire you. In fact, we want to offer you a raise." The raise came at the perfect time. As my family crumbled, my career flourished. It was a poetic justice that filled me with a cold satisfaction. But my family did not give up. They went feral. The first sign came on a Monday morning. I went down to the parking garage for a crucial meeting with a multi-million-dollar client and found my car vandalized. "Ungrateful" was spray-painted in red across the hood. "Rotten hell" on the side windows. The front right tire was cleanly slashed. There were no cameras in that section of the garage. No witnesses, but I knew exactly who had done it. I was 2 hours late for the most important meeting of the quarter. My client was not happy. "We understand emergencies can happen," he said coldly, "but this makes us question your professionalism." I almost lost the contract because of that attack. While I dealt with insurance and the tow truck, I managed to salvage the situation at work by a thread. My boss, though annoyed, understood it was vandalism. But the message was clear. My family had declared all-out war. The deterioration of their situation accelerated, but now they were fighting like cornered animals. First, they lost their biggest client, a construction company that had worked with them for 15 years. The project my father tried to manage alone resulted in a failed delivery that cost them $30,000 in penalties. Then came the public humiliation. They created a pathetic GoFundMe titled "Help with Urgent Family Medical Expenses," with a tear-jerking story about an ungrateful son who had abandoned his sick family. The description was pure fiction. They invented a non-existent medical emergency and painted me as a heartless monster. The campaign raised $17 in 2 weeks. The few comments were devastating. "Why is not the son helping? Something does not add up here." The humiliation followed them to the supermarket, where acquaintances would awkwardly ask about the family emergency. My sister violated the restraining order by showing up in my office parking lot, causing a scene that could be heard from the 5th floor. "You are a monster. Dad is sick. Mom's house is going to be lost because of you." I did not say a word. I took out my phone, recorded everything, and called the police. When they arrived, she was still screaming. The officer who cautioned her told me, "If she comes near you again, it will be an automatic arrest." Meanwhile, I monitored their financial movements through public records. The workshop machinery began to disappear. First, the $8,000 laser cutter, then the industrial welder, all sold at desperate liquidation prices. It was a quiet Wednesday night when my phone exploded. It was Anna, my girlfriend of 6 months, screaming hysterically. "Who the fuck is that bitch? What are you talking about? The photos. Someone sent me photos of you kissing another woman in your apartment." My blood ran cold. "Anna, calm down. What photos? You look very happy hugging that blonde wearing the same shirt you wore last week." Anna sent me the images. They were convincing. My face, my apartment, my clothes, but I was hugging a woman I had never seen in my life. The work was professional, almost perfect. If I did not know it was impossible, I would have believed the lie myself. "Anna, those photos are edited. Someone is trying to sabotage our relationship." "Yeah, right." The classic cheater's excuse. She hung up. When I tried to call her back, she had blocked me. The message accompanying the photos was anonymous, but the style was unmistakable. "Thought you should know what kind of man your boyfriend is. A concerned friend, my sister." It had to be her. Anna broke up with me via text that same night. 6 months of a relationship destroyed by artificial intelligence and family desperation. The contrast was brutal. While I calmly watched their financial ruin, they attacked me where it hurt most: my personal life, my happiness. My father tried one last move. He called me from a neighbor's phone, his voice oscillating between pleading and rage. "This is all your fault. Your mother would be ashamed of what you have become." The silence that followed was more eloquent than any response. I hung up without a word. An uncle who had always been neutral tried to mediate. He called me with his typical conciliatory tone. "I understand both of you, but family is the most important thing." "Did he tell you he demanded 80% of my salary?" I asked calmly. "Or that he stole the trust fund money my grandmother left for my mother's treatment?" Absolute silence. "Did he tell you that my mother died while he had $250,000 tucked away that could have paid for better medical care?" "I did not know those details." "Now you do." He never called again. The first foreclosure notice arrived on a gray Tuesday in November. My lawyer forwarded the notification to me with a note. "It is official. The auction is scheduled for January 15th. That same day, I founded Legacy Restored LLC. The name was no coincidence. It was time to restore my mother's true legacy, not the one my father had corrupted with his greed. 5 years of living on the bare minimum, plus my recent raise and a business loan backed by my new salary, allowed me to transfer $200,000 into the LLC's account. The irony was perfect. The money they had prevented me from saving for years was now coming back to claim what should have always been mine. It was more than enough for the auction, considering the outstanding mortgage was only $180,000 and the real estate market was down. The following weeks were a festival of desperation. My father's and sister's cars disappeared one morning, repossessed for accumulated debts. A nosy neighbor posted photos in the neighborhood Facebook group. "Does anyone know why the Martinez family's cars were towed? They looked very stressed." The comments were brutal. The entire neighborhood found out they were bankrupt. My sister made one last desperate attempt. She showed up at my building at 11 Post Meridian, pregnant and crying. The doorman called me. "There is a lady here who says she is your sister. She is very upset." "I do not have a sister," I replied. "Please escort that person off the property." From my window, I watched her walk away in the rain. For a second, I felt something akin to pity. Then I remembered the fake photos that destroyed my relationship with Anna. The pity evaporated. Her last act of spite was pathetic. She posted old photos of me with my mother on Instagram and Facebook, with victim-blaming captions about how grief changes people and how money breaks families. The reactions were minimal, 3 likes and 0 comments. Even her own friends had abandoned her. My lawyer officially registered Legacy Restored LLC as a bidder for the auction. Everything was in place. The night before the auction, I did not review finances or strategies. I sat on my couch with a photo of my mother I had rescued from the family home years ago. It was from one of her last good days when she was still smiling despite the pain. "We are getting your house back tomorrow, Mom," I whispered to the photo. "And this time it will be for a family that deserves it." The phone rang. It was my father calling from an unknown number for the last time. "Please, it is all we have left. It is the house where your mother was happy." "My mother was happy there," I replied with a calm that surprised even me, "until you turned it into a financial tomb. What do you want, money, an apology?" "What do I have to do?" "Nothing," I said before hanging up. "You no longer have anything I want." That night, I slept better than I had in years. Tomorrow, justice would have my face in my checkbook. The day of the auction arrived with rain. I got there early. I parked a block away and watched from a distance. My father and sister were standing outside the courthouse getting soaked, their faces like they were at a funeral. The auction lasted exactly 12 minutes. There were other bidders, but when Legacy Restored LLC made its final offer of $215,000, everyone else withdrew. I watched my father's face crumble as the gavel fell, and the winner was announced. My lawyer called me as they walked, defeated, toward their battered car. The house is yours. Proceed. One word. 5 years of medical debts I should never have paid. 5 years of sacrifice for a lie. One single word was all the moment deserved. The 30-day eviction notice reached their hands 3 days later. My phone immediately exploded with call after call after call. I let it ring until I finally answered one. How could you? It was my hysterical sister. It is Mom's house. You sued me, harassed me, and even made me lose my girlfriend, I replied calmly. I've nothing to do with your problems. Figure it out yourself. I hung up. The following weeks were a festival of pleas that I systematically ignored. Desperate voicemails, pathetic text messages, attempts to contact me through acquaintances. Nothing. I watched as the deadline approached day by day. Eviction day was brutal. Constant rain, a biting wind, a gray sky. Perfect. I arrived just as the cheap moving truck was parking. It was a decrepit, dented vehicle, exactly what you would expect from someone completely bankrupt. 2 sheriff's deputies supervised the process, ensuring my ex-family removed their belongings in the pouring rain. News of the eviction had spread like wildfire. The entire neighborhood had gathered with umbrellas and coffee mugs as if it were a spectacle. I saw Mrs. Lopez from number 42, the twins from the corner, even old Mr. Martinez, who had known my mother for 30 years. My sister, in her desperation, had called everyone. Her in-laws were there, faces etched with second-hand embarrassment. Her husband hid behind them, clearly regretting marrying into this family. 2 distant uncles watched from their cars, not daring to get closer. I parked directly in front of the house in my black sedan, not ostentatious, not modest, elegant, powerful, like the justice I was about to serve. When I stepped out of the car in my tailored suit, impeccable under the rain, a murmur rippled through the crowd. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my mind, but nothing had prepared me for the real feeling, absolute calm, total power. My father saw me first, his eyes widened like saucers. You, he screamed, his voice breaking with a mix of disbelief and fury. You came to gloat to enjoy this. My sister ran toward me, soaked and frantic, her pregnant belly prominent under the rain. Look what you have done to us. We have lost everything because of you. I am going to have a baby. The murmurs from the neighborhood intensified. Some looked at me with disapproval, not knowing the full story. I said nothing, simply raised a hand to stop her without touching her. My silence was more intimidating than any shout. The sheriff's deputies turned to watch on alert. Please, my father sobbed, falling to his knees in the mud, clutching at my pant leg. We are family. Your mother would not have wanted this. The neighborhood watched in absolute silence. This was the moment, the perfect audience for the truth. You lost everything the day you decided I was a bank account, I said, my voice clear enough for everyone to hear. I walked toward the front door, ignoring their pleas. My father ran behind me, desperate. Where are you going? That is my house. I pulled out the new shiny key. I inserted it into the lock. The click was audible to the entire crowd. I turned and faced not just my family, but the entire audience. I did not say, "It is my house now." The silence was deafening. Even the rain seemed to have paused. My sister's in-laws exchanged shocked glances. I am Legacy Restored LLC, I announced. When you demanded 80% of my future, I decided to reclaim the past instead. My sister stammered something about injustice. I cut her off like a laser, raising my voice for all to hear. You talk about injustice. My voice resonated for the whole audience. Let us talk about the $250,000 trust fund your father stole from his dying wife. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Old Mr. Martinez moved closer, incredulous. The money that would have paid for better medical care for my mother, the debt they forced me to pay for 5 years, never existed. My sister completely collapsed. Her in-laws stared at her with horror and disgust. Her husband physically recoiled, putting his hands on his head. Mom died poor, I continued, my voice breaking slightly, believing there was no money for better treatment. Meanwhile, this man, I pointed at my father, had $250,000 of her inheritance saved for his businesses. The uncles watching from afar started their cars and drove away. My sisters-in-laws turned and walked toward their vehicle without a word. The entire neighborhood was murmuring, scandalized. Old Mr. Martinez approached me, tears in his eyes. Is that true, son? Every word. He turned to my father with pure contempt. Carmen was like a sister to me. How could you? I took an envelope from my jacket and threw it at my father's feet. It was immediately soaked by the rain. I paid off the rest of my mother's medical debts. With what was left after legal fees and renovations, I created the Carmen Hernandez Oncology Scholarship with a $50,000 donation to the local hospital. I did not even get back half of what he stole, but it was never about the money. My father and sister became pariahs. Their mechanic shop closed for good. No home, no money, no family to support them after learning the truth about the trust fund. My uncle, who had threatened me, never spoke to me again after reading the confession. The house, now a blank canvas, was completely remodeled, not as a home for me, but as the perfect space for a real family. I rented it out at a fair price and chose a young couple with a baby. I gave them the stable home I never had. Months later, I drove down the street. I saw the new family planting flowers in the garden. The site of my torment had become a place of creation. I received a postcard from the tenants, a photo of the baby taking its first steps in the living room. "Thank you for building our home." The last time I saw my father and sister was in a cheap supermarket. They looked older, gray, defeated. They switched aisles to avoid me. I felt no hatred, only indifference. Now I sit in my apartment, looking out at the city skyline. Vengeance did not bring me explosive joy, but a deep, quiet peace. I closed the book, punished the wicked, honored my mother, and built something good from the ruins of the past. I did not get my family back. I built something better, a life where no one can ever extort me again. Was it worth it? Every damn penny. From an objective perspective, this event demonstrates an inevitable law. Every decision in the past has a corresponding price in the future. At its core, the conflict was never truly about money. It was about a pattern many families fall into, the quiet transformation of love into obligation, and obligation into control. In many cultures, ideas like family duty, sacrifice, or filial responsibility are sacred values meant to protect relationships. Yet those same values can also be twisted into tools of pressure when someone decides that loyalty must always flow in one direction. In the story, a son who had already carried years of financial and emotional burden suddenly discovered that his role had been reduced to nothing more than a source of income. What began as devotion slowly became exploitation, and what was called family support revealed itself as something far closer to extortion. When we step back from the drama, the tragedy is not only the betrayal itself, but the toxic loop that allowed it to grow. Society often teaches us that enduring mistreatment for the sake of family harmony is a virtue. We are told that speaking the truth might break the family, that refusing unreasonable demands makes someone selfish. But silence does not heal injustice, it only protects it. The son's decision to walk away, to stop paying the bills and eventually reclaim what his mother had been denied, was not an act of cruelty. It was the moment he finally ended a system built on manipulation and guilt. I think many people watching this story unfold might feel a mixture of discomfort and recognition. Maybe you have seen something similar in your own life. Maybe you have felt that heavy expectation that says you must give endlessly because family is family. But there comes a point when drawing a boundary is not abandonment, it is clarity. It is the moment someone finally says, "Love cannot exist where respect does not." When I look back at the end of this story, what stands out most is not the foreclosure, the lawsuit, or even the public revelation of the truth. It is the quiet transformation afterward. A house that once symbolized manipulation and deception became a safe place for a young family starting their life together. Painful history was not erased, but it was redirected into something constructive. That is often how real closure works, not through revenge, but through reclaiming dignity and choosing what kind of future we allow ourselves to build. Still, stories like this leave us with an uncomfortable reflection about loyalty, justice, and the limits of forgiveness. If you discovered that the people who raised you had betrayed your trust for years, stealing from someone you loved and demanding your future as payment, would you feel morally obligated to forgive them for the sake of family unity? Or would you believe that protecting your own boundaries is the only honest form of justice?